Hey, what's up, everybody? Super Character back with another video. Okay, back with another video. Today we're going to play Brookhaven. Oh my god. And I'm the military. I have now a military. Now I have a military. And then he said Germans are attacking. So I think this is World War II. Okay, I'm just gonna unban her. Get unbanned. I can't remember. I'm recording. Oh my god, it's World War II.
Yo, what's going on, you guys, and welcome back to another video. And as you guys
I'm back. I'm just finished eating.
I literally said destroy all my fucking guards and
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is World War II. He said he's smart, but he doesn't really know how to drive. Oh my god, this is World War II. I'm nervous.
That's my summary of dancing, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Come on, guys, talk about again. Hope you have a fantastic day. And yes, the
This guy is best for.
summary. And it is.
What's the name again?
Okay. I said on last week's video that it's about Valora and these weird glasses. And yes, it is. Okay, can you confirm that now? Because I'm ready.
Oh my god. We German. We USA has failed. We USA has failed. Germany has destroyed their tanks. Yes.
are you done eating?
Also, please remember, these are my opinions. I'm a five notes at Freddy's YouTube channel. I don't hate any of these stories, but I can definitely say some of them do need some sitting up in my eyes. Also, one more thing.
Change jobbers be bad.
Baby, I miss you. Hindi ko na lang yung dala iPad. Baka na-vlog ka pa na pak. Ano tayo miss you? Wala eh. The earphones are here.
The game Matt's working on is a VR game where you walk around the maze trying to avoid spring. And when it finds Springtrap, he touches him and feels a slight shock. This will come into play later on. Over the next few pages, Matt is getting a lot faster, a lot more aggressive because he's eating a lot more and he hasn't really been feeling well. This all comes to a climax when Matt goes into his kitchen, grabs a knife, slices his stomach open, out comes the baby Springtrap and pets his head saying daddy, and Matt dies on the floor due to blood loss. This story has
Bro, you
little to
look
no
like
redeeming quality. Matt is not a likable protagonist. The story's over way too quick. The world they live in is very boring, and the whole time I just was wishing it was over. It's also unnecessarily gory. In my opinion, FNAF 4 works a lot better when it's implied instead of explicitly shown. In stories like Jump for Christmas and 1:35 a.m., the death is implied, not shown. I think this works much better. It just makes all of them worth reading. In the flesh, at its core, it's broken. 1 out of 10. Let's move on.
I didn't so I need to download
Just wants to be a scientist. Look how happy he is on this photo. He's living his dream, pursuing his passion. He's living his life to the fullest.
wait.
Through the contact of Chris's index finger, the goo could it's implied that this happened to everyone, which is creepy. This story is, I'm sorry, just boring. This story and In the Flesh are the only stories I would consider bad, so let's talk about why and what we've learned so far. Fat Bear Fright stories are quite short, all things considered, so the pace needs to be tight and the events need to happen quick. Character development and world building are very important. We need to know our characters' motivations and what will lead them to their inevitable fate. Leaving endings mysterious and ambiguous is fun if done well, but it's important to give the reader some sort of idea, put them in the right direction to explain what is happening. Doing weird things just to do them is not very fun. This is my personal criteria of what makes a good Fat Bear Fright story, so let's move on to the decents. Kids at Play is just weird, man. In this story, we follow Joel, a guy who's dreaming of bigger and better things, wanting to be a musician. Right now, Joel is just a gardener. Yeah, things went from 0 to 100 really In the days that follow after meeting the kid, Joel is having nightmares about these kids that play signs, basically road signs telling you to be careful because there's kids in the area. However, things really escalate when Joel, having no control of his body, mind you, goes back to the ditch where he hit the kid, and then in very intense pain, as the book would of course remind us, his limbs fall off, his skin falls off, and he dissolves to a pile of dirt. Can I please just remind you that these books are published by Scholastic? You know, those book fairs you used to go to in the 4th grade? Pretty insane, huh? But anyways, back to the story. I guess there is a few more things to mention. There's a cop named Montgomery, which is pretty interesting, and it turns out the kid survived being in the ditch, which was pretty nice, but wow, this story's just really weird. Remember that criteria I mentioned earlier? How a story shouldn't be weird just to be weird? This story definitely crosses that threshold. So that was Kids at Play, a story that, in my opinion, definitely should have been scrapped. Let's move on. Next up, we have Together Friendly, the third and final story of Friendly Face.
Oh my god, this guy is just, he destroyed the reunion.
The story got objectively worse. The stories kept deviating away from Five Nights at Freddy's, had loose connections to the lore at best, and just in general weren't as fun to read as the older stories. The embodiment of what the later stories represent in my mind is this story, Together Forever. Not only is the story's premise strikingly similar to Breaking Wheel, and once again, this story is unnecessarily gory. Gory does not equal scary, it's just disturbing in a different way than it should be. Long story short, Jessica and Brittany are working on this animatronic called Rosie Pork Chop. Both of the girls stay after school one day to program it, but of course it goes wrong. Rosie grabs Brittany and traps her inside the animatronic's stomach hatch. Jessica tries to free her, but accidentally turns it on her C mode to animatronic mode. road, and of course, Brittany dies. As any sane person would, Jessica screams because there's blood coming from the animatronic. Her best friend was literally just killed in front of her eyes. This causes Rosie the pig to activate and kill Jessica as well. And that's the basic plot synopsis. It's predictable and bland. However, credit where credit is due. The next day, when the pig animatronic reversed to itself as Ladies in Waiting, gave me genuine chills. But that's all I really have to say for this story. Nothing new, nothing we haven't really seen before. Let's move on. Coming in at number 29, we have Coming Home. I'm still not the biggest fan of this story. In this story, we follow Susie, yes, the Susie that possesses Chica, trying to communicate with her mother and sister, telling them that she loves them before she officially passes away forever. Yes, it's sad and it's interesting to get some more insight on the missing children incident, but man, is this story so unbearably slow. This one is pretty lengthy, all things considered, and nothing really happens until the ending. Although I will say this ending is probably my top 5 favorites.
Now
It was
it
nice
changed
to see
to
the two
World War
sisters
III.
actually get closure, although the story was pretty boring up to that point. Overall, it was a really interesting story. A lot of it desired in my eyes. Next up, we have sea bonnies. If you couldn't already tell, this is a story based off sea monkeys, a real-world creature. In this story, we follow Maud, whose younger brother wins some sea bonnies at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. However, Maud doesn't really like sea bonnies. They completely consume and take over their pet goldfish, turning it a light purple as the sea bonnies are. Maud wants to get rid of them. The sea bonnies don't really like that idea, though, so they telepathically taunt Maud through his thoughts. They say things like, Maud gets fed up with the sea bonnies taunting, so he decides to flush them down the toilet. Doing so might
Oh my
have been
god,
his
this guy
worst
just
mistake.
broke the
He
reunion.
somehow accidentally ingests some, but unlike most Fazbear Fright protagonists, he actually goes to the hospital. Twice. But the doctors brush it off and Maud quote-unquote dies. He doesn't really die, the sea bodies just kind of take over his body. I don't hate this story, but it's just kind of a little unoriginal in my mind. It's very similar to both of most of I dislike in the flesh, it did do it first. The trope I'm referring to is something going wrong inside the protagonist's body, like Gumdrop Angel in the flesh and so on. This is also one of the only Fazbear Fright stories to have no lore significance whatsoever, not the Fazbear Fright universe or the Disney. No personal vendetta against this story, it's just extremely mediocre. While working on the script for this video, I asked you guys on YouTube which story was worse, Sea Bonnies or Friendly Face. You all said Sea Bonnies, and I agree, so Friendly Face got moved up to slot 27. Friendly Face suffers the same fate as Sea Bonnies. It's an overdone concept. When some evil force is chasing our protagonist, and it's never implied if it's real or just a hallucination all in their mind. 1:35 a.m. Bunny Collie and Blackbird all do the same shit, but at least in those stories it's handled much better. Even the ending, which is what I was really intrigued to see while reading, was just a rehash of Step Closer. Our main protagonist gets freed by a truck. Instead of taking another step closer, let's take a step back to see how we got to this point. One day, two best friends, Edward and Jack, meet a cat called Faraday, which they adopt and look after for several months. Unfortunately, Jack and Faraday end up in the street, and they both die, of course. Edward is grieving, so to cope with the loss, he decides to get help from Fazbear Entertainment. Using some DNA, Fazbear Entertainment brings back Faraday as an animatronic. But unfortunately, Edward didn't send in DNA from Faraday. He sent in DNA from Jack. Edward is obviously creeped out by this and tries to get away from the elusive cat. Unfortunately, he runs into a road and gets freed. Not a bad story per se, it was just an overdone concept once again, and it was only really worth reading in my opinion for the Fazbear Entertainment sections. We've talked about Dance With Me before, so we won't dwell here too long. The most interesting part about the story to me was the location. This is one of two stories to actually mention sister location in any way, more specifically Circus Baby's Pizza World. The main antagonist, Ballora, doesn't really do much. She just kind of dances around and gets creepier and creepier, reminding Casey, the thief, that she should probably clean up her act. There's many awesome moments like the window scene and the dream sequences, but that's about it. Nothing really too noteworthy here. This story is mostly just a character study on our main protagonist and is built upon anticipation, and that's about it. No one dies or anything, nothing I can really positively say, but nothing really negative either. So let's move on. The puppet carver was pretty strange. You would think from the cover this would be some sort of Night of Living Dummy parody, but it's actually pretty interesting. It takes a very unique route. This story is very confusing to me though, not necessarily by plot, but just what is going on here. Jack is the owner of a failing pizza place, and one of his employees makes a chocolate way to make him inside this little machine. It makes them with wood, not sure how that's possible, but you know, we'll roll. Through some shenanigans, Jack ends up inside the machine, and it's never clear if he died or not. The chocolate got really close to him, but he's alive, so did he come back as a puppet, or what? And why can't people tell? Jack doesn't feel any pain when inside the machine and comes out as a quote-unquote new man, which is a common thing we'll see throughout the story, and fast food is just kind of tossed in here. Not sure why, but okay. Jack's quote-unquote new man persona is very similar to Scrooge from A Christmas Carol. He becomes giving to an almost concerning level. And that's not all I have to say. Nothing really else to note besides their sort of intermissions throughout the story, giving us some more information on what a puppet carver actually is. Basically, those intermissions tell us that puppet carvers become slowly more and more sentient. So who knows, maybe Jack really did die in that machine. But overall, a pretty decent-ish story, 5 out of 10. Let's move on. Coming in at number 24, we have probably a controversial pick, that being To Be Beautiful. Calm down, I don't hate it, but I definitely don't love it. If you've seen the original ranking or my Doppler Songs ranking, I've said many times this story just misses its mark for me. It's hard to exactly put my finger on it, but I think it's just a combination of things. It was very muddy towards the middle of the story, and I didn't really sympathize with Sarah that much. This story is very creepy, the way it describes Eleanor and the events that transpired, and Baby stealing Sarah's identity at the end was something that I genuinely didn't see coming. But the character and world are forgettable, and the ending is the only thing that I really find interesting. I like Eleanor's involvement much more in the Stitch Race segments. Personally, I just feel for a character as important as Eleanor to the Fazbear Bryce universe story, I feel like she should have had a much more interesting narrative origin and something that really showed how important she would be going forward into the final events of these stories. The Cliffs is interesting. A lot of people give it slack for being boring, but personally, I really enjoyed it. Robert, a single father, is taking care of his 2-year-old son, Tyler. Robert's wife, Anna, passed away during childbirth, and ever since, Robert doesn't feel like he has what it takes to take care of their son alone. He has constant thoughts that he's not good enough and has some PTSD, always worrying about his son's safety. I'm a very anxious person by nature, and I always check up on my family multiple times a day to make sure they're doing okay, so this was a very relatable protagonist for me. Tyler buys a tag-along Freddy at the store. It's very similar to Psychic Friend Fredbear from FNAF 4. It's supposed to keep an eye on him. Robert finally gets some relief, but not for long. When he goes inside the house to answer a phone call, leaving Tyler in the garden, he comes back to see Tyler is gone in a white van driving away. Robert is obviously he lost his last connection to his wife. He gets constant reminders from the tag-along Freddy to go to the cliffs, a common place in the town that people go to commit suicide. Robert sees this as a maniacal taunt, but it's actually just the tag-along Freddy doing its job. It's telling Robert where his son is, at the cliffs. After a few more filler shenanigans, Robert eventually caves in and goes to the cliffs. I was 100% convinced Robert was going to jump and take his life, but the story actually takes one of the best turns I've ever read. Robert thinks about his family, thinks if they were still here, is this what they would want? And I think that's a great message, even for real life. Robert then finds his son Tyler at the cliffs and they go home, a happy, wholesome ending. This story may not be a fan favorite, but it's definitely one of my favorites. I was invested in the characters, they were relatable to me, and I love the story's message that if you hang on just a second longer, things will turn out okay. My only real issue is that this story is kind of slow in the middle, even though it's only 60 pages, which is quite short for a Fazbear Fright story. It still had some pacing issues, so let's move on. The real Jake is sad. I don't mean, oh no, I feel bad for him sad, like really sad. This story exists to give some backstory on the Stitch Race Jake. Jake is in the hospital with a brain tumor and is going to die soon. This is the absolute only story to have zero ties to Five Nights at Freddy's, Freddy Fazbear, Fazbear Entertainment, nothing. Not even a single throwaway line. I think this was done on purpose because this is real and something that can really happen. Jake's dad is overseas in the military, so he can't really see Jake that much. So they talk through walkie-talkies. They ask what the real Jake would say, which is basically Jake's ideas of what he wants to do when he eventually is well enough to get out of bed. But yes, he does pass away. I didn't really like this story, but it was definitely necessary to get some backstory for Jake, and while I didn't really love it, I guess it is a good story. Colton is an idiot in jump machines. So Colton wants to win an Xbox at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. It doesn't say Xbox, but he seems like the type who would definitely play Xbox. Colton tries to break the ticket pulverizer at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. It's basically this booth where you jump on this platform and tickets rain down from the ceiling. One night he breaks into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to do his dirty work. Instead of just stealing the Xbox and running away, he decides to work on the machine. Okay, Colton opens the hatch under the ticket pulverizer and gets to work, but climbs fully inside once he sees Hoyles the clown is trying to pull him out. It's kind of like a security safety animatronic. Colton gets stuck inside the machine and is stuck there for many hours until the restaurant opens back up again and the children stomp on the platform, of course turning Colton into a human pancake. This story obviously goes into much more detail on his death, but we'll skip that because it's pretty brutal, even more than that. I mean, this dude checks all the boxes on the bad ways to die checklist. Dying fully aware of what is going to happen to you, check. Dying from a completely avoidable incident that you could have gotten out of yourself, check. Dying in a very embarrassing way full of regrets, check. And finally, dying at a young age, check. I swear, this dude could have avoided all of this if he just grabbed the Xbox from the prize counter and ran. The last thing worth noting is that Colton probably possesses Hoyles the clown, but that's about it. Not a terrible story, definitely more decent territory, but it's very interesting how a story like this brings to light that every day we make choices, and if we make the wrong choice, it can end our life. Basically, the story is shaking you, saying, hey, you see this kid? Don't be stupid like him. Don't make stupid decisions. Book number 8, Come Drop Angel, was one of the few of the later books to actually be on par with the originals. All 3 stories had great characters with unique plots, but the worst one was definitely the first story, Come Drop Angel. In this story, we follow our main protagonist, Angel, who's close to graduation, and after eating a gummy from Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, she turns into a life-size gummy monster. According to my notes, that's about it. Obviously, I'm skipping out on some details like some side characters, probably the most important being Dominic. Dominic is a Freddy Fazbear's employee, and while most seem completely oblivious to the horrors associated with this food chain, Dominic seems fully aware and up to speed. Angel met Dominic at her stepsister's birthday party, and she goes to him for help when she's
Yeah, baby. What am I talking about?
watches as she This one's a pretty above average story. Nothing crazy, nothing that I should say. Nothing that's great.
Oh my god.
All I have left to say is starting
Look at
with
me.
number 19 and onward are stories I would definitely recommend you read and check out because they're very interesting and I can't really do justice to them in about a minute. So let's move on. I definitely appreciate Only Freddy more than in my last ranking, but I'm still not crazy for it. What's frustrating about this story is that it is really deep, but it doesn't really fit back into the last third. To that point, it's just an easier character. Alex is kind of neat. Granted, Alex did try to change his ways. Only Freddy just went away with his right.
Just ignore that back thing. Other sounds. Whose phone is this? Wait, I found one. Why are there phones here? Why are there phones under this pillow? Just ignore those calling things.
Eh, kaya ano ng height chart? Pa-check na kung nautol ka.
Oo. Yes.
Dapat na in-order ko. Ang malay, ang lagaw ba? Queens,
Yes.
okay, let's check your height.
Usas. Okay, guys. Okay, viewers. Just wait there.
Feeling ko, ipilit mo na.
Ipilit ka.
Tapos,
Ikaw siya.
hindi mo, sticker, hindi mo na.
Okay. Anong height din mo?
60, 70. Hindi na ito gabi sa balay na lang kay nakalahan mo pa nakawang niya, mga parts. Ang tawagin picture, tapos may snapshot mo na pa.
Picture niya ka pa eh.
Oh, new. What is it?
May nakapilo na or wala sa...
Instantly click with me that she was going to fall. And she does. Kind of poetic because she thought Marley comes
Oh my god, this is our battle.
involvement other than a few dream sequences. Pretty good story, a guilty pleasure. Negative energies such as jealousy, anger, which is what Toby feels towards his older brother Connor. But through some heartfelt shenanigans, Toby and Connor make up, and of course that means they kill Shadow Bonnie, right? Instead? Well, no. After all of this character development and resolution to this jealousy plot, what does Toby do? He goes back to the Fazbear Arcade and plays the very same game that got him infected with Shadow Bonnie in the first place. He loses, and he dies. What a fool. This story was honestly on pace to crack the top 10, but no. They fell off pretty hard. I've heard a lot of mixed opinions about Find Player 2, the Final Fazbear Fright story of Prankster, aka the Final Fazbear Fright story of the entire series. Personally, I thought it was a great Find story series, but many people didn't agree. Spent a lot of years at Final Fazbear. Probably similar to those tunes from Chuck E. Cheese, only a lot more technologically advanced and more extreme. One player hides and the other player sees. Mary Jo goes to hide, and once Amy is ready to go look for her, she sees a mysterious man trying to go into the tomb. She's obviously freaked out by this and decides to retreat back home. And she never sees Mary Jo again. The guy who we saw trying to go into the tubes, Emmett Tucker, is arrested for Mary Jo's disappearance. Then we flash forward 10 years, and Emmett Tucker has been released from prison. Amy is fed up of the unanswered questions from her past, so she goes out to finally get some answers on what really happened to Mary Jo. After stalking Emmett for what feels like a good couple hours at least, she follows him to the grocery store to get gas, and when she finally follows him all the way back to his trailer, she's finally ready to confront him. After Emmett finally notices Amy, he invites her inside. Obviously, Amy's pretty skeptical about this, but he seems like a pretty okay dude. He was just trying to get his daughter out of the tube, but of course, Amy won't take no for an answer. Amy attacks him with a taser, so he locks her inside his bathroom and calls the police.
Okay, guys.
She escapes before the police gets there, and she decides to go to where the old Freddy Fazbear's used to be. Now it's a different restaurant, however, but doing some sneaking around, she's able to find the old tunnels. It's locked in, and she finds Mary Jo. I mean, she's dead, obviously, and now she's trapped. But she found her. Not gonna lie. So congrats. Obviously, yeah, Amy does die. Very similar to Delilah's death from 1:35 a.m. Both died inside the building in a very confined tight space. I just realized that this summary is over 2 minutes. I'm sorry, I had no idea I wrote down this much information in my script, but this story had a lot to cover, which is why I really like it. Overall, a solid 8 out of 10 for me. Great characters, great settings, and above all, the plot was very interesting. Sergio's Lucky Day is the wackiest, and I do mean the wackiest Fazbear Fright story ever. Sergio doesn't really seem to have great luck, but one day he finds Lucky Boy, a wooden balloon boy figure that can talk. He found it in a trash can after his car broke down. He decides to take Lucky Boy with him to the gas station and gets a lottery ticket and wins $600,000. Over the course of the middle of the story, Sergio slowly but surely becomes wins $600,000. Over the course of the middle of the story, Sergio slowly but surely becomes more and more reliant on Lucky Boy's advice. Should he quit his job? What should he spend his money on? What should his new job be? This all comes to a climax when Sergio is invited to his high school reunion.
Oh, sorry. You should be there.
What is makeup for everyone?
You know that, right? And so after using Flash back for a few months, I guess decided to go ahead and switch back to Puppet Show.
Ay, oo. Galit.
Who the hell is that? Who's that sound?
You can. Who's playing metal music?
I don't know. Sorry guys,
Wait,
it's just somebody.
I want to see how.
What does Lucky Boy suggest? Just get rid of him. Once Sergio makes it to the reunion, he leaves Lucky Boy in the hall. Of course, everyone then notices the freak. But what's funny is no one notices Sergio's new look until after he's separated from Lucky. I guess that means that Lucky Boy has some reason. What's also funny, Sergio is completely oblivious that the bloody mess is coming from him. He genuinely has no idea and can't figure out why people are overreacting to his new book. One of the most faster writing stories of all time. It was very fun to read, and the ending genuinely came out of nowhere. Like, I'm not even joking. My jaw dropped when I read that first plastic surgery scene. Another solid 8 out of 10 for me. And it's also recommended to, like, actually, I'm gonna try to...
Alright guys, please like and subscribe with the notification.